Most people over 50 are one bad week away from collapse. And the frightening part is that the food sitting in their kitchen right now will not save them. Not because there is too little of it, but because most of it is the wrong kind. And there are 6 specific foods that change everything. 6 foods that determine whether your body holds steady or starts to break down when conditions get hard. Most people skip at least one of them. And that one gap, that single oversight, is often the difference between someone who stays strong and someone who deteriorates quickly without understanding why. There is one item on this list that is almost embarrassingly affordable. You've probably walked past it 100 times. But when your energy is gone, when cooking feels impossible, when your body is running on empty, that item is the only thing standing between you and a very bad situation. We will get to it. But first, stay through the entire video, because the order matters, and so does the logic behind each one. Number 6. Rice. The foundation that keeps your body from running out of fuel. After 50, the body stops being forgiving. It stops letting you skip meals, eat inconsistently, or go long stretches without adequate energy. The margin for error shrinks significantly. Miss a meal at 30 and you feel mildly hungry. Miss that same meal at 60 and the fatigue can linger for the rest of the day. Your concentration dips. Your reaction time slows. Small physical tasks feel heavier than they should. The body at this stage is simply more sensitive to fuel gaps, and the consequences of those gaps arrive faster and stick around longer. That is where rice earns its place on this list. It is not glamorous. It does not have an impressive nutritional profile compared to other foods. But what rice does better than almost anything else is deliver steady, reliable energy at low cost and with almost no barriers to storage or preparation. The carbohydrates in rice are what your brain and body use as their primary fuel. When that fuel is present, you think clearly, move efficiently, and your body manages its resources well. When it is absent, everything slows down. For younger people, that slowdown is an inconvenience. For someone over 50, it is a real and noticeable deterioration in how the day goes. Rice also earns a special kind of respect for its adaptability. On days when your health is solid and your appetite is strong, rice works as a normal staple. But on days when you are sick, exhausted, or simply unable to face a full meal, that same rice becomes porridge. Thin, warm, easy on the stomach, and still capable of delivering enough energy to keep your body functioning. Very few foods can do that. Serve you well at full strength and still show up for you when your body has almost nothing left. There is another aspect of rice that goes unspoken but matters enormously for people in this age group. It gives you visibility. A bag of rice tells you exactly how many meals you have left. You can measure it, portion it, and plan around it. That sense of control over your own nutrition may sound minor until the moment it is gone. When health is uncertain, when the world feels unstable, knowing you can manage your next meal is a stabilizing force. It reduces anxiety. It keeps your mind clearer. It gives you something concrete to hold on to. Economically, rice is among the most efficient foods available. It is inexpensive, calorie-dense, and stores well for extended periods without refrigeration. For anyone on a fixed income, retired, or no longer bringing in a regular salary, that combination is not just convenient, it is genuinely important. But here is the mistake that trips people up most often. They assume that rice alone is enough. It is not. Rice covers carbohydrates. It does not cover protein, fat, or the range of micronutrients the body needs to maintain muscle, repair tissue, and support the immune system. Eating only rice keeps hunger away, but it quietly allows the body to weaken over time. Strength decreases. Illness becomes more frequent. the kind of slow deterioration that is easy to miss because it happens gradually. Rice should always be paired with a protein source, a small amount of healthy fat, and vegetables when possible. That combination transforms a basic staple into a meal that actually supports long-term health rather than just preventing immediate hunger. One more thing worth noting. White rice raises blood sugar quickly. That is not a reason to eliminate it, but it is a reason to be thoughtful about how you eat it. Moderate portions, combined with fiber and protein to slow the rate of absorption. And if your situation allows, transitioning partly to brown rice is a small adjustment with meaningful long-term benefits for blood sugar stability. In terms of storage, rice is almost ideal. Keep it dry, sealed against moisture, and away from insects. It does not need electricity. It does not require any special environment. Under reasonable storage conditions, it lasts for a very long time. During stretches when getting to a store is difficult, that shelf life becomes one of the most valuable things you own. But perhaps the most overlooked quality of rice has nothing to do with nutrition or economics at all. It has to do with familiarity. A warm bowl of rice or a simple pot of porridge carries something that matters when circumstances get hard. It feels normal. It signals to your nervous system that things are manageable. In moments of stress and disruption, that signal should not be underestimated. Familiar food in a familiar form keeps people calmer and more functional than they realize. Rice will not take you to peak health on its own, but it will keep your energy stable, your body functional, and your mind from crossing into panic. Think of it as the ground floor. Everything else you build stands on top of it. What happens to the rest of your food if the power disappears for 3 days? Number 5. Beans. What keeps the body from losing its structural strength? In the winter of a year that many in Texas will not forget, millions of people lost electricity for days at a stretch. Refrigerators stopped working. Meat that had seemed like a reliable resource lasted less than 2 days before it was no longer safe to eat. Fish went the same way. Fresh produce wilted quickly. The people who remained most stable were not the ones with the most food in their homes. They were the ones who had the right food. Simple, shelf-stable items that did not depend on power and did not spoil. The lesson from that experience is not dramatic, but it is important. The threat most people face in difficult situations is not starvation in the traditional sense. It is the quiet, accelerating loss of physical strength that happens when the body stops receiving adequate protein. After 50, this process is already underway at a low level in everyone. Muscle mass declines gradually with age. The medical term is sarcopenia, but you do not need the clinical language to understand what it means in practice. You walk a little slower, you tire more easily. Carrying things that were once effortless becomes a real effort. And without enough protein in the diet, that decline accelerates. The body begins pulling resources from muscle tissue to meet its basic metabolic needs. The result is weakness that compounds over time and is very difficult to reverse. Beans address this directly. They are not the most exciting food. They do not come with impressive packaging or modern branding, but they do something essential. They supply the protein your muscles need to hold their structure, the fiber that keeps blood sugar steady, and a range of micronutrients that support overall function. Think about what that means in practical terms. You have meat in your refrigerator. You have fish. You have fresh food. 3 days without power, and most of that is gone. Dried beans, sitting in a sealed container on a shelf, are exactly where you left them. Completely intact, ready to use. No electricity required, no refrigeration, no degradation in nutritional value. That contrast between protein sources that disappear quickly and protein that lasts almost indefinitely without any power input is not a small distinction. It is one of the most important differences in how people hold up physically over an extended difficult period. Beans are also economical in a way that few other protein sources match. Canned versions offer convenience, but come at a higher cost and are less practical for long-term storage in large quantities. Dried beans are dense with nutrition, extremely inexpensive per serving, and light enough that a meaningful supply takes up very little space. For people over 50 managing a fixed budget, this combination is hard to beat. There is a common objection that comes up around beans, which is that preparation takes time. Dried beans do need to soak and cook for a while, but a little planning eliminates this as a real obstacle. Soak them the night before. Cook a large batch at once. Combine them with rice, and the result is a complete protein, a meal that covers essential amino acids without requiring anything more complex than water, heat, and time. What you get from that simple combination is not just a full meal. You get sustained energy, structural protein for muscle maintenance, fiber for digestive health, and stability in your blood sugar that prevents the dramatic dips in energy that people over 50 feel more acutely than younger people do. The deeper point here is that most people preparing their food supply think about quantity. How much food do I have? How many days will it last? But quantity is only half the question. The other half is what kind of nutritional work that food is doing. Rice gives you energy, beans give you strength. They are different functions, and both are necessary. Caloric adequacy without protein leads to a very specific kind of decline, one where you are eating enough but still weakening steadily. And after 50, that kind of weakness is not easily recovered from. Is your body getting enough of what it needs to stay strong, or is it slowly losing ground without you noticing? Number 4, canned fish. The nutrient that keeps your mind and body running at full capacity. There is something that happens after 50 that most people do not connect to their diet until the effects are already visible. Thinking slows slightly. Focus requires more effort. Physical coordination becomes fractionally less precise. Recovery from exertion takes longer. These changes are gradual enough that most people attribute them to aging without asking whether nutrition might be playing a role. It often is. And one of the most significant nutritional factors in this slowdown is the presence or absence of adequate omega-3 fatty acids, specifically EPA and DHA, the forms found in fatty fish. These compounds are structural components of brain tissue and are deeply involved in how the nervous system communicates with itself. Without enough of them, cognitive function declines faster than it needs to. With consistent, adequate intake, that decline slows meaningfully. Canned fish, sardines, mackerel, salmon, tuna, puts those omega-3s within reach at a price almost anyone can manage, and in a form that requires no refrigeration, no preparation, and almost no cooking skill. Open a can and the food is ready. That level of accessibility matters more than most people acknowledge, especially for older adults who may experience days when energy is low, appetite is reduced, or the motivation to prepare a complex meal simply is not there. Beyond omega-3s, canned fish delivers high-quality complete protein in meaningful amounts. It provides vitamin D, which becomes increasingly difficult to obtain from sunlight alone as people age, and tends to decline in absorption, even from dietary sources. Vitamin B12 is present in significant quantities, a nutrient that is genuinely critical for neurological function and energy metabolism, and one that a surprising number of older adults are quietly deficient in without knowing it. The shelf life of properly stored canned fish runs to several years in most cases. It does not degrade in ways that are visible or obvious, which makes regular rotation a smart habit. Use older cans and replace them. But under normal storage conditions, a supply of canned fish maintained with reasonable care is a resource that will be there when you need it, unaffected by power outages, temperature changes, or extended periods without shopping. Fresh fish is nutritionally superior in theory, but fresh fish requires refrigeration, expires in days, and disappears from availability quickly during supply disruptions. Canned fish is the version of that nutrition that you can actually rely on over time. For people over 50, the consistency of omega-3 intake matters more than the perfection of any single meal. A little canned fish several times per week delivers a regular supply of the compounds the brain and nervous system genuinely need to function well. That consistency, maintained over months and years, has a measurable effect on how clearly you think, how well you sleep, how effectively your body manages inflammation, and how much strength you maintain. What often gets overlooked is the role of B12 and vitamin D together in how the body generates and sustains energy. Deficiencies in either one create fatigue that does not respond to rest in the way that normal tiredness does. You sleep and still wake up feeling drained. You eat adequately and still feel depleted. Canned fish addresses both of those deficiencies simultaneously, inexpensively, without any complicated preparation. The category of food that works both nutritionally and practically under difficult conditions is a small one. Canned fish belongs firmly in it. Number 3. Salt. What prevents the body from breaking down at its most basic level? Most people understand on some level that salt is essential, but most people significantly underestimate what essential actually means in this context. It does not mean useful or beneficial. It means the body cannot perform its basic functions without it. Sodium, the primary mineral in salt, is involved in virtually every physiological process that keeps you alive. Every nerve signal your brain sends requires sodium to travel. Every muscle contraction, including every beat of your heart, depends on sodium balance. Fluid regulation throughout the body, the maintenance of blood volume, the function of the kidneys, all of it is tied directly to sodium availability. When sodium drops below what the body needs, the effects are rapid and serious. Muscle weakness, disorientation, nausea, and in severe cases, a physiological collapse that can become life-threatening in hours. This is not a slow, gradual decline like protein deficiency. Low sodium becomes a crisis on a short timeline. For people over 50, there is an additional layer of vulnerability here. The kidneys become less efficient at conserving sodium with age. The sensation of thirst diminishes, which means fluid and electrolyte balance becomes harder to manage instinctively. Conditions like vomiting, diarrhea, or excessive sweating deplete sodium faster than most people realize, and the replenishment that a younger body handles almost automatically requires deliberate attention in an older one. In hot conditions, during any kind of physical exertion or during illness, the rate of sodium loss accelerates substantially. Without replacement, the body reaches a dangerous imbalance much faster than it would under normal circumstances. Salt is also one of the most durable things you can store. Kept dry and sealed, it does not expire. It does not degrade. It does not require any particular storage environment. A single purchase, properly stored, essentially lasts forever. In that sense, it is completely unique among the items on this list. There is a practical emergency application where mixing a small amount of salt with a small amount of sugar in clean water creates a basic oral rehydration solution, one that has been used in medical contexts around the world for decades when access to professional care is unavailable. It is not a perfect medical intervention, but it restores electrolyte balance in a way that plain water cannot, and it has meaningfully helped people recover from dehydration-related collapse in situations where nothing more sophisticated was available. The oversight most people make with salt is simply forgetting to think about it. They plan for calories, they plan for protein and carbohydrates. They make sure they have food. But salt does not register as food in the way that other items do, so it gets left off the list. Then conditions become difficult, exertion increases, sweating happens, an appetite decreases, and the absence of adequate sodium creates a physiological crisis that undermines everything else they prepared. Keep salt stored separately from your primary food supply. Divide it into smaller sealed portions to protect it from moisture. And remember that its role is not to improve your meals, it is to keep your body functioning at all. You do not collapse from hunger alone. Sometimes you collapse from an electrolyte gap that could have been addressed with something that costs almost nothing. Number 2. Peanut butter. The dense energy source that bridges the gap when eating feels impossible. Here is something that does not get discussed enough about people over 50. There are days, sometimes stretches of days, when appetite simply disappears. Not because of illness necessarily, just because the body is fatigued, stressed, or running low in ways that suppress the desire to eat. And on those days, the risk is not just discomfort, it is that the body begins consuming its own resources, muscle tissue, stored reserves, to compensate for what is not coming in from food. The gap between not wanting to eat and not eating enough has real consequences, and it accumulates. A few days of inadequate intake at this age, especially during periods of stress or physical demand, can produce a level of fatigue and weakness that takes considerably longer than a few days to recover from. Peanut butter closes that gap more efficiently than almost any other food. A single tablespoon holds approximately 90 to 100 calories. 2 or 3 tablespoons represent a meaningful caloric contribution that the body can use over several hours. The combination of fat and protein in peanut butter is specifically valuable because fats provide slow, sustained energy rather than the rapid spike and crash pattern of carbohydrates. For someone who cannot face a full meal, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter eaten directly from a spoon represent a nutritional intervention that requires essentially no effort and no preparation. That last point is more important than it might initially seem. Consider a realistic situation. Power has been out for 2 days. Cooking fuel is running low. Your body is fatigued. The thought of measuring rice and waiting for water to boil feels genuinely difficult. You have food available, but using it requires effort you do not currently have. Peanut butter requires no heat, no water, no cooking skill, and no preparation time. It is ready when you are, regardless of your current energy level or what resources are available. For people over 50, fat as a caloric source also plays a specific metabolic role. As the body ages, it becomes somewhat more reliant on fat metabolism relative to carbohydrates during periods of sustained demand. Peanut butter supports that metabolic profile directly. It is not just dense energy, it is the kind of energy that older physiology handles particularly well over extended periods. The protein content in peanut butter contributes to muscle preservation. It is not a complete protein on its own, but paired with other foods across a day, rice, beans, canned fish, it fills gaps and contributes meaningfully to overall protein intake. For someone who is struggling to eat enough, every source of protein that requires zero preparation effort is worth having. Storage is almost effortless. Unopened jars are stable for over a year without refrigeration. They do not require special conditions. They are compact, portable, and inexpensive relative to the caloric and nutritional density they provide. A few jars occupy minimal space and represent a meaningful safety net for periods when cooking is impossible or appetite has collapsed. Think about the gap between having food and being able to eat it. Peanut butter eliminates that gap almost entirely. Number 1. Oats. The food that keeps you going when everything else requires too much of you. There is a specific kind of situation that most people do not plan for carefully enough. Not the situation where food is unavailable, but the situation where food is technically present but impossible to use. Where rice sits in a bag on the shelf and beans are in a container and canned fish is in the cupboard, but you do not have the gas, the power, the energy, or the ability to prepare any of it. That situation is more common than most people expect. And in that situation, oats are what stand between eating and not eating. Oats require almost nothing to prepare. Hot water poured over rolled oats produces a warm, edible meal within a few minutes. No stove necessary, no cooking skill required, no timing, no technique, no equipment beyond a cup, and a source of hot water, which can be produced with a small amount of fuel, an electric kettle, or any minimal heat source. When everything else on this list demands more than your current capacity, oats ask almost nothing of you. After 50, there will be days when that matters enormously. During the extended power outages in Texas that we mentioned earlier, the people who reported the most difficulty were often not the ones with the least food. They were the ones whose food required cooking methods that were no longer available. They had calories, but they could not access them. Oats represent the solution to that specific failure point, the food that works when nothing else can. Biologically, oats provide slow-digesting complex carbohydrates and a meaningful amount of soluble fiber. That combination produces a gradual, steady release of energy that sustains function over several hours without the sharp rise and fall in blood sugar that comes from simpler carbohydrate sources. For people over 50, blood sugar stability is not a minor consideration. It is directly connected to how you feel, how clearly you think, and how much energy you have access to throughout the day. The fiber in oats also supports digestive health, which becomes increasingly important with age. Gut function affects immune response, nutrient absorption, and energy availability in ways that are easy to underestimate until digestive health degrades. From a storage perspective, oats are nearly ideal. Kept in a sealed container away from moisture, they last for a significant time without any special conditions. No refrigeration, no electricity, no temperature control. They are inexpensive, widely available, lightweight, and compact. A substantial supply takes up very little storage space and costs very little to maintain. The ease of eating matters too. Oats produce a soft, warm, mild-tasting meal that is easy to digest. For someone who is ill, exhausted, or experiencing reduced appetite, that quality is not a minor comfort. It is part of what makes the food usable when others are not. Hard, heavy, or strongly flavored foods can be difficult to force down when the body is struggling. Oats cooperate with you. They ask very little and deliver what the body needs in a form it can actually accept. There is also something to be said for the psychological function of a warm, simple meal. When circumstances are hard and stress is elevated, the nervous system responds to familiar, manageable experiences. A warm bowl of oats is not just nutrition, it is a signal that things are still workable. That signal, repeated across difficult days, contributes to the kind of mental stability that keeps people functioning. Oats will not solve everything. They do not provide enough protein on their own, and their fat content is minimal, but that is not their job. Their role is specific and irreplaceable: to keep you eating when the conditions for eating have broken down, to provide accessible energy when everything else on this list requires something you do not currently have, to be the fallback that is always available, always usable, always ready. Rice gives you stable daily energy. Beans give you structural protein that preserves muscle. Canned fish gives your brain and nervous system the nutrients they need to stay sharp. Salt keeps your body from physiological breakdown. Peanut butter sustains you through the days when eating feels impossible. And oats keep you going when you no longer have the capacity for anything else. These 6 items are not a random collection of healthy foods. They are a system. Each one covers a specific failure point. Each one addresses something the others do not. Together, they form a foundation that is simple to maintain, inexpensive to build, and effective enough to prevent the kind of deterioration that happens when the body is stressed, when conditions are difficult, and when preparation was not quite right. The question is not whether you will ever face a difficult stretch. The question is whether your body will have what it needs when that stretch arrives. Most people do not fail because they ran out of food. They fail because they prepared for the wrong things. They stocked quantity without considering function. They built a food supply that looks complete on the surface and fails at the first real test. Because in reality, it is not the absence of food that breaks people down. It is the absence of the right food at the right moment. If what you have just heard makes sense to you, then do something with it this week. Not a complete overhaul. Just a start. Pick one of these 6 items that you do not currently have an adequate supply and add it. Then the next week, another. The system builds quickly when you approach it one practical step at a time. If this has been useful to you, please take a moment to like this video. It genuinely helps the channel, my channel, reach more people who are asking the same questions you are. And if there is someone in your life over 50 who is thinking about this kind of preparation, share it with them. The information is only useful if it reaches the people who need it, because what comes next is even more specific. In the next video, we go through 12 dried foods that serious preparers rely on but almost never discuss. Foods that are lighter, last longer, and address gaps that most people have never even considered. You will want to see that list before you make any more decisions about what to stock.